When it comes to making changes in your life, you're the expert. You are in the driver's seat. Everything else is just a guide. Welcome to InJoyness Podcast, your guide to wellness, recovery, and change. I'm your host, Dela, and thank you for joining me on this episode. Welcome to another episode of InJoyness Podcast. Today I'm talking to my friend Sara, and we're talking about her experiences with social anxiety and to just discuss a few of her own personal experiences of what it's like to live with social anxiety. So here is Sara. Hi, Sara.
Hi, Dela. How are you?
Good. It's good to have you here on the show. And thank
you for having me.
Of course. And thank you so much for really allowing us to hear your personal story and what it's been like for you and what it is like for you. Because by hearing your story, a lot of people are going to relate, and it kind of normalizes how a lot of people feel, but maybe they don't have the words to describe. And honestly, that creates a lot of anxiety for people. It creates a lot of shame and a lot of loneliness. But when we share our experiences, we know that other people are feeling the same thing. If I hear you, I know that you are another person who is living with this, and that gives me hope. And hope stands for hold on, pain ends. So let's start. Sara, why don't you give us a little bit of a background of how this started for you?
So I was functioning really well, normally, as most people would say. I presented well up until 2019, 2020 is when I started feeling the effect of social anxiety disorder and general anxiety disorder. So initially started with a general anxiety. I started to feel a lot of overwhelm at work. I used to be a supervisor. I used to perform very well. And then one day I just couldn't show up at work. I sat in my car. I cried for a long time. I just couldn't bring myself to go up the stairs, go to my office. And when I got to my office, I couldn't shake it off. And so I knew something was wrong. I didn't know what it was. When I reached out for help, I was told it was anxiety, and I refused the diagnostic. It wasn't something that easy. I could not be anxiety. I was someone that was performing very well. So where did that come from and why? I was in complete denial.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then I looked into it. It took about 6 months, going to therapy and kind of accepting that anxiety might have been something different than what I picture it to be before I showed up for therapy. It's something that I was living inside. It was like more of a physical reaction than, okay, it's just that I don't want to get up today, or I don't want to do this, or I tell myself I'm scared. It's like, it was complete. Like, my body was just paralyzed, and that's what anxiety does to you. It's your reaction.
Mm-hmm. So it changes your life completely.
For me, it did. I think a lot of people may live with it throughout their life. I did have anxiety in the past, but it was like, okay, there's a challenge, and then I kind of I didn't sit down and think about the challenge. I just walked through. I didn't really think about it. But then from that moment on, it was it was paralyzing. Instead of being fight reaction, it was more of a flight reaction.
What steps did you take to actually start looking into that? What was the first step to get help?
Initially, I reached out to get a psychologist or psychotherapist assigned to me. I was assigned a psychologist. From there, I was going to the session, but by the time because the medical system, the way it is, it takes a very long time before you get a psychologist assigned. I would say reach out to anybody, crisis center, or even, or if you can afford it, reach out to psychotherapists on your own faster. Because by the time I reach out and they reach back to me and we were assigned somebody, I was really like, I was not the same person anymore. I couldn't make myself go to work, and I was becoming so avoidant that I would probably rather not keep living than going to work.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at that point, I didn't understand why is this just anxiety? Like, why? So I was also by that time already dissociating. So I had to start really from the basics. So relearning how to sleep, relearning to take care of myself. Self-care was like start up from the bottom. I had to just sit in the sun and absorb vitamin D for a couple minutes during the day. And then once that got under control, then I could add little tasks to myself.
Yeah.
Like making my bed. That was always the first thing I would do is make my bed. That way it was a good base to the day.
Yeah.
And then one day I was able to shower, and then the next day I was able to get dressed, and then it just kept going a little bit better. It took a lot of time for me, probably a good 3 to 6 months before I was able to function again. I'm not back to what I was before. But yeah, I've been able to slowly build myself. I think that you got to learn to be kind to yourself and gentle and rebuild. It took a long time before it brought me there. So
Yeah.
I had to take a long time to build up again.
Yeah. Sounds like a step at a time and one day at a time kind of deal.
Yeah.
For people who are not familiar with the term dissociation, when you said you were dissociating, can you explain what that looks like?
Yeah. So for me, what it looks like is when facing an event that's very overwhelming, my stress, it becomes so much that it's easier for me to just like check out. I think I can do it on my own. A lot of the time I just go like on the moon, like not think about what's happening in front of me. But sometimes your body will do it on its own because it's like a safety feature. You become so overwhelmed, so much is compounding inside you that the emotion are too strong. You can't feel it anymore, and then your body check out, your brain checks out, and then you come back in. Sometimes you're still overwhelmed. Sometimes the stress is gone. So you could have been like listening or having an exam. Then when you come back, your exam is still happening, or you might check out again, or you might be check in, the exam is done, and then now you feel it's like a big relief.
So
and then it starts to go down again.
So in that example, when you're dissociating, that you're feeling in that moment, you check out, but are you still able to function? Like, are you still able to do the exam while you're checked out?
Yeah, you can. I don't know if there's different type. I haven't really researched it, but for me, I would still be doing that exam. I'm just like, at the start, I'll be kind of like looking from like outside of my body, or like it's distorted. The sound that I hear is distorted, or my vision is distorted. Yeah, you'll still go through the process, but if you come back and ask me what was the question on the test, I won't be able to answer you.
Wow.
Some people can drive themselves for like hundreds of kilometers, and some people can dissociate for days after a traumatic event.
That's incredible.
Or after a trigger, like the event can have happened a long time ago, and then now they have triggers.
Yes. Yeah. So it sounds like kind of, we spoke about this earlier, like a safety behavior that you kind of checking out so that you don't feel, you're not impacted by that anxiety so much, I guess. Is that kind of what happens?
Yeah, that's how it was explained to me, that you have an emotion that's showing up, or you have something happens and you have a reaction to it, and and then that reaction is an emotion, and then the top. But then because you're like so I guess, you're not comfortable with that emotion, you suppress it. And then as soon as you suppress it, then it's anxiety. So anxiety is, according to my psychologist, emotion that's suppressed.
Mm-hmm.
If you process that emotion, if you stick with it a little bit longer, then it doesn't turn into anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you suppress the anxiety, then it can be perceived different ways in your body. So it can be chronic pain. It can be, IBS, irritable bowel.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Um,
So what have you learned to do to not to dissociate, or is that still your coping mechanism?
it's less, I use it less. That's why I say, like, I think I can control it. If something is not interesting, I'll just go into my happy place. I don't, like, it's not like I can tell you what's happening there. It's just that I don't hear people talk anymore. I'm not concentrating on them. So to beat it, I have to be very careful and paying attention and being mindful of the emotion when it happens, that I don't suppress it. So if I'm angry at something and somebody's talking, then I have to let them know, okay, like, we need to come to an agreement, or we need to stop and I need a break for a second. And then, grounding myself. So grabbing a cup of, hot water and touching the heat on the side of the cup. That will ground me and make me kind of like come down. Same thing with hot water. Run your hands under hot water. Taking a shower with hot water, running the hot water in the back of my neck also be helpful. Deep breathing. When I feel the anxiety starting to build, like that sickness in my belly or tension in my shoulders, then I have to start breathing, taking very deep breath. Like, it's like very using your diaphragm and pulling down like your lungs as low as you can inside
Mm-hmm.
you. And
Mm-hmm.
that helps quite a bit.
So sounds like you've found some really good coping mechanisms for yourselves. And most of it has to do, as I hear you, about coming back to the present moment. So being mindful.
Yes.
So mindfulness about what it is that you're feeling in that moment. Would you say that's like the end goal of this is let me actually see what I'm feeling right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you were sad and you're trying to avoid being sad, the good cry is probably going to be very helpful. It's a bit more difficult with emotion like anger or fear. What do you do with those? There's times where fighting might be more dangerous than avoiding.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I can see how that could end up not in a really good place that,
Yeah.
I mean, avoiding it would probably be a better choice. So let's say, if I asked you, Sarah, what are some examples of situations where like it causes you to feel that anxiety to that level? What are some examples?
When we started talking today, at the start of this episode,
Mm-hmm.
I could hear you talk, but then I knew that I was starting to be hearing you, but from far away. And then my vision becomes more like I look at you from far away as well. Like it's not blurry. It's just distant.
And
So then I have to, like, once I start talking, once I stop, I have to like keep eye contact and focusing.
wow,
Yeah.
wow. So as I started talking, so you knew that this is an uncomfortable situation that's coming up for me, right?
Yeah.
Sarah's gonna
Yeah.
be, recorded on a
Yeah.
podcast. So
Yeah.
then you started. So your automatic coping mechanism is to dissociate from this moment so that you don't feel that anxiety as much. So then you literally have to coach yourself to come back. Like
Yeah.
it's almost like you're being pulled away, but then you have to bring yourself back.
Yeah. And you have to do this while maintaining face. Like, I need to maintain a conversation that makes sense and not be like, appearing distracted or appearing not interested or not starting to talk to myself as well. Like, good job, Sarah. You're doing good. Keep going.
Well, may I just say, good job, Sarah. You're doing really well. I
Thank you.
can't imagine, honestly, the amount of energy that would take.
It's very exhausting. So if I go, like after we hang up, I'll probably need to,
Yeah.
and I feel like it's almost that superpower leaves my body. And that superpower used to stay longer, I feel, before. And now it's like, okay, go sit down for a second, calm down, and then the tension just leaves my body.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing will happen if I go to the mall or grocery store, and it's very overwhelming because there's a lot of people. It's unpredictable. Situation that is unpredictable is the worst.
Sure.
You can't. It's not like unpredictable in the sense that someone's gonna like pull out a gun on you. It's unpredictable in the sense that
Anything
you don't
could
know.
happen.
Yeah, you don't know what direction they're going.
There's so
You
much
don't
out of
know.
your control.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's usually really loud. So in bigger store like a Walmart and the ceilings are very high, for me that would be very one of the places where I'm going to dissociate because it's too much. So now I've been trying to train into being more present, which make it very difficult because that's when the tension builds up a little bit. That's when I sit in the car after I'm done, it's very exhausting.
Oh my gosh, yes. So as you, let's say, I mean, you can't avoid obviously doing some things like grocery shopping. As you decide to let's say go grocery shopping. So for someone who's not living with social anxiety, this might not even be like a thing. You don't even think about it. You need something from the store. You just get in your car, go drive there and pick it up and come back. For someone with social anxiety, for example, it's like almost like you need to plan,
Hmm.
right? This
Yeah.
big affair. And so,
So
yeah.
I think sometimes it was easier to plan a wedding than it is to go to the grocery store.
Oh my gosh.
I became really good at using crutches. So that's what I would call like my husband. I'd be like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
go get this. So some people really enjoy going to the store, seeing people, and they need this tribe with the social
Yeah.
side of it. I don't anymore. There's like a light switch. It just doesn't, it's not enjoyable. If I never crave, like during COVID, I never craved to go sit in the mall. Like I was talking with people, they were like, oh, I wish I could just go roam around. I'm going like crazy not seeing people walking in front of me. And I'm like, well, you were just sitting down judging them before. Why do you need to do this now? But I did not need this, so I don't understand them. And that's how I would have a reaction like this. Well, you're just judging them. Why are you going there? But I'm sure they're gaining something that I don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
So going to the mall or going to the grocery store, I would plan, okay, I'm going to get 3 things and I'm going in and out. And it's like, I'm not going to run, but it's going to be fast.
Mm-hmm.
And not going to do I'm not going to pick up things that I want to just look at. I'm not going to read instruction or I'm not going to read ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I used to do. Now or I would order online as well.
Mm-hmm.
Now I have to force myself to be going in person because I don't want to regress any more further. I will pick places that are more predictable, smaller grocery store, smaller in size, like the roof would be lower or the ceiling would be lower, so it's not as loud. It's not as, I want to say triggering, but it's like a sensory trigger. Somewhere that is more like the clientele that's going is a bit more predictable as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. As you're saying this, I can appreciate how someone would want to alleviate their suffering by avoiding, certain situations, like, whatever is causing the anxiety, the source. If I'm avoiding that, then I'm going to suffer less. But at the same time, I hear you because it's like, okay, if I don't, then I'm never going to get rid of this.
Yeah.
right? So let me put myself in these situations, but let me plan
Yeah.
so that I feel a little bit safer.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you said something really good when you said I used crutches, like my husband, sending my husband to the store, or maybe like ordering online. But if I'm always going to use a crutch, then I will never strengthen those muscles.
Yeah. And I was losing my independence as well.
Yeah.
And there's a sense of empowerment, like if you can do it. But there's also, it's kind of like finding the balance between the empowerment of going in, getting what I was supposed to go and be proud of yourself, and then not getting to the car and be like completely melted because you're so exhausted, and then being like 3-4 days to build yourself up to go to the next trip,
Yeah.
and hopefully not needing bread in between those 3 days.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, this condition has changed your life. I mean, immensely. And so when you think back at the past few years where you've been like dealing with this, what has been the biggest lesson for you, Sara?
Maybe being humble. I understand people that have anxiety now, instead of being judgmental towards them as I probably was before. Definitely was. I wasn't even accepting the diagnostic because I was like, I'm not like that. I'm not just hiding under a table and being scared of everything. Like I was very, very functioning. I was chasing challenge. I was driven by adrenaline. Like the more danger, the better. The more excitement, the better. I was driven by adrenaline. So why can I not get out of my car and just walk to my office? That didn't add up for me. But yeah, I was judgmental to the people that I would so much judgment towards the people that were facing it their entire life that I knew that I didn't want to be that, I guess. Maybe that's where denial was coming from. I have a little bit more compassion now, or quite a bit more compassion.
You said something that was really important because, we do look at things we are less knowledgeable about and we tend to judge. So, for example, we see someone with depression and anxiety and we might think of them as weak. And in our own mind, if we've never experienced anything like that, we just say, oh, what's the big deal? Just get up. Just get up and do it, right? And so, but we don't understand what we don't understand. It's because we've never lived in that person's shoes, in that person's shoes.
It's true what you're saying. I see it with a lot of my friends. They will be talking. It's funny because they show compassion towards me because they've seen who I was before and seen where I'm now. But then they will have the same judgment towards somebody else. They're going to talk about somebody else and judge them. And I'm like, well, really, you're probably doing the same thing about me behind my back. But they're not getting it. And I can see in them that they also have anxiety. And eventually they're probably going to hit a wall. And that's why we're losing so many people. Like we have a hard time understanding it as a society and being compassionate about towards each other. So yeah, we're missing something here that could help many people, I think. I'm not entitled to be the way I am because I didn't get it as bad.
So there's this like almost like this guilt of why?
I have a little bit of guilt of why, but also in a sense that like, okay, pick up yourself up. It could always be worse type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, come on.
You know, you're lucky. You still have, I don't know, like all your members and just build up slowly. Or you're lucky. You're still here. Or you're lucky. You know, it could always be worse. It doesn't matter what happens, I guess. It could always be worse. And that's, I can find this in every situation. And I think it's a resilience in the sense that, you know, like you can see the light side of things and you can move on.
Mm-hmm.
But when that resilience doesn't work anymore, then that's you're burnt out, you're tired, you just can't fight anymore. That's when it becomes a problem, I think.
Yeah. Sara, again, going back to my perspective on your experiences and the life you've led, I would say, oh my gosh, like the courage it must have taken for you to do all these things. How do you see the courage it takes you today to keep going despite all the struggles that anxiety brings on?
Um, the courage come like almost at the minute now. Like I have to, okay, little hurdles I have to overcome, little hurdles I have to overcome. Instead of feeling like before, it's like, okay, there's this course coming. I'm going to be the only female. I'm going to be the only, this is something new. It's a new challenge. It wasn't even as scary as like just making it to lunchtime today and doing what I have to do during that time, or going to the grocery store and getting a loaf of bread.
Or even speaking up when there's like 10 people on a conference call.
I still find my voice sometimes when there's injustice, when I'm going to talk and be like voicing to defend other people. But it's very difficult to advocate for myself.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is so interesting. That has to be a topic for another talk. Why is it so much easier to advocate for other people than it is to advocate for ourselves?
I think the proximity makes it very difficult. It's too personal. Your like emotion takes over. Where if I fight for somebody else, it's a different emotion. It's almost like that energy is going towards it.
Mm-hmm. It's bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I wanted to ask you, Sara, if someone's listening to this podcast and thinking, that's just, it hits home for them. What is a couple of advice that you can give as someone with lived experience?
I'd say take the time in the day to get the sun to touch your skin and absorb some of that vitamin D. It will make you slow down. It will ground you. You'll feel much better after. Take the time to have that shower and run the hot water in the back of your neck. I think it's really important to just slow down and be there in the moment, and it makes it easier a little bit after. The window of being better might not be very big at first, but it gets a bit bigger and a bit bigger.
Yeah. And reach out, ask for help.
Yes. There's a lot of people that are trained, and if you don't find the right person that fits you right away, knock on a different door.
Move
there
on.
Is somebody.
Yeah, next.
You're worth it, and you deserve the right person to help you.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You don't have to do this alone.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Sara, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and I always love our conversations, and just so grateful to have you agree to put this out to the world so other people can also benefit from your experience.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for doing this for people. I think you're helping a lot of people. You helped me for sure.
Oh, thank you. Here's hoping that by hearing each other's stories, we can gain, I think, the most important thing, which is hope. Okay. Well, for those who have listened to this podcast, I wish you wellness, recovery, and change for the better. Until next time. Thank you for listening to this episode of InJoyness Podcast, a guide in your journey to wellness, recovery, and change. In gratitude and love, I'm your host, Dela.